There's just not enough focus on sleep, though. You do surveys of kids that have gone to colleges, and if you know any of those, do you remember any of the examples that he gave about kids go to college, they get all of these, they get training in how to study, training in how to interact with each other, training in how not to drink, which is a good thing, training in hazing, but they never get training on sleep. And he says this, I literally have got a recorded copy of his book, Audible, and used it to go to sleep quite often. Undiagnosed sleep apnea is a hidden health crisis. I'm not going to repeat a bunch of statistics, but one of the things that one of the reasons I wanted to discuss that this today was, is Tom here? Yeah, Tom shared with us his episode yesterday, and we started talking some. And if we get a chance, I hope we can talk a little bit more about like the spouses and what they go through. You know, as we talked about yesterday, the men are usually the ones taking the first hits, the first bullets with cardiovascular disease, and we saw with Angie, she has some concern. We have a couple of spouses. You heard Janice talk about staying away from me on Tuesdays. Now, what's that got to do with this? Well, here's the thing. Sometimes you got to think about statistics. By far, the biggest health statistic associated with sleep is this. People don't think about it, but have you heard the term microsleep? You know what that means. What's it mean?
Johns Hopkins, really briefly.
Where's the classic match to the TNT or gas? It's having microsleep. It's saying, I'm a little bit sleepy, but I'll stop, or I'll get some coffee, and I got a long way to drive today. Well, this is what happens when that happens, and we have no clue. Who's going to admit I fell asleep? Well, you did. You're very unusual in admitting that. Now, let me go back to where I was creating those connections that's probably making you think, but where's he coming from? So, with us, with Tom, with several of us, with now I'm starting my word finding stuff again. Sorry about that. Our friend that presented yesterday, Chuck, when we're looking at statistics and we're looking at taking some of the risks off the table, what's the number one risk for Chuck right now for death?
Well, another heart attack.
Still probably heart attack. He has taken that risk and just done this. Number one risk of disability for Chuck and Gene and me and most of us in here. Stroke. And as we're doing what we're doing in terms of getting the fat off, we're making huge impact on that risk. Yes, we may be assuming some other risk in terms of hypoglycemic episodes. But think about it. I don't see. I don't think there's any comparison in terms of the amount of risk that many of us still retain for heart attack and stroke. It's still the number one killer. Look at the statistics. Is having a hypoglycemic attack, as scary as it might be, that's still the number one risk for men our age? No, it's just not there yet. So it can be scary, but my point is, let's look at some statistics. Just like looking at statistics here, this is a major statistic, and we're not recognizing it as a society. This is, I think, one that happened in Colorado and wiped out about a dozen people. So again, it didn't just kill the driver; it killed a dozen other people. Current average of sleep is 6.8 versus 9 a century ago. I don't know how they got that number for 9 a century ago, but I think it's safe to say that we're not sleeping as much as we used to. And a healthy level is 7.5. It's not 5. How many people think that they're healthy at 5 and they feel good at 5 and they're okay and they're different? There are people that are genetically different, but they are very rare. It would be very unusual for us to have one in a room this size. And what do we do about sleep? Again, we ignore it. Most people tend to think that it's a waste of time. We're focusing more and more on a 24/7 economy. And it's associated with our metabolism. When I say this, I'm quoting him. I haven't gone too deep into looking at the science itself, but the guy appears to be a very good scientist, and his point is 1 night of bad sleep results in 2 days of increased insulin resistance. I see a head nodding back there. Have you seen the science on it, or have you read? You haven't read the book, but you've heard about that too. So when I say that, people say, "Really? I never heard of that." And it's associated with cancer. Did you know that? In fact, the WHO has said shift work is a cancer risk. A little bit about types of sleep. You have REM sleep. You've probably heard of that. Rapid eye movement. It's the second half of the sleep. It's what you miss if you're like me and you tend to wake up at 3 in the morning and have a hard time going back to sleep. It's REM sleep that you're missing. In REM is non-rapid eye movement sleep, and it's the first half. It's slow wave and deep sleep. Both of them are important. He gets into the details of how they're important and what they're important doing. One of them actually tends to help us create synapses. Another one tends to help us pair away synapses. And both are very important. Sleep and glucose metabolism. Insulin resistance in as little as 1 night of sleep loss. Carter and Associates, University of Chicago. Insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes from years, standing pattern of sleep less than 7 hours. Nurses' Health Study, 70,000 participants. The Swedish study, 2,000 men. Sympathetic stimulation, fight or flight. And cortisol peaks during REM sleep. Who in here has significant, now see, I got great sleep and I'm just, who in here has dawn effect? Dawn effect? That's when you have a high fasting glucose. And then maybe you eat something and your blood sugar goes down. In fact, in other groups that aren't nearly as with it and smart and already understanding in this space as you guys, we'll do these AM fasting glucose, and people walk in and they say, "Wait a minute, I don't understand. My blood sugar was 105 before I ate, and then it went down to 90." And that's the dawn effect. And that's because our cortisol peaks in 3 or 4 or 5 in the morning during our REM sleep. I'm not going to go down that bunny hole about dawn effect, but there is that association. Sleep and weight gain in Haynes, increasing obesity with decreasing sleep duration. You're actually hungrier the day after you miss sleep. Have you ever noticed that? You are. There's science behind that comment. Obesity in children is associated with decreased sleep duration. Obesity in older adults, and some self-studies using things like the cardiac mechanism. Sleep has a huge impact on hormones, not just obviously cortisol from REM sleep. Ghrelin. Everybody know what ghrelin is? The hunger hormone. Insulin, we've been talking about a lot. Leptin, follicle stimulating hormone, and testosterone. As we mentioned, the WHO, World Health Organization, has, good morning, Mark.
Morning.
has labeled sleep loss as a probable carcinogen. There are known increases in cancer of the prostate, breast, uterus, and colon. And they've done this with lab models as well. It decreases killer T cells, which are involved in wiping out cancers. You know, the human, all bodies, whether it's a mouse body, you name it, we're developing little cancer cells all the time. But what happens is we have mechanisms within our immune system to kill those cancers, and the T cells are a huge component of that. So if you're decreasing killer T cells, you're decreasing our ability to prevent cancer by stopping those early cell development. It also decreases certain types of macrophages, increases others. Again, bad effect. Anybody not hear of telomeres? Not meaning you have heard of telomeres or you have, okay. So it impacts, decreased sleep impacts telomere length. Chronic sleep loss is associated with Alzheimer's, cancer, diabetes, depression, immune dysfunction, hypertension, etc. Telomere shortening has been associated with shortened lifespan, and sleep loss has been associated with telomere shortening. Even short-term sleep loss has been associated with it. There's one of the studies. Another one, and that's with the short sleep. Snoring. So the next time your spouse is snoring, you can tell them they're shortening their telomeres.
Did you want to go to the intensive experience in Louisville but just didn't have that kind of money or time? Take a look. We've got another one coming up in Orlando, February 28th. There's a way to save a lot of money on it, as much as 50% off. Take a look.